Leah, thank you so much for taking the time in this season that you're in of postpartum with a newborn. You have two kids. He's napping. So thank you for taking the time during that sacred nap time to join us on the Girl Unfiltered podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
So, I mean, when I think of you, not only do I think of New York because that's your whole brand, you're based in
Flattered.
New York, but I think of passive products because
Mhm.
that's what you speak on, and you share so transparently about how it's worked in your business. And kind of like, I would love for you to just kind of take us back because I know that the big driving force behind that is obviously being a present mama for your two kids. So
Mhm.
I would just love to know pre-kids versus post-kids, like what did that transition look like? What were some of the wake-ups you had? What were some of the shifts that you knew had to start taking place, not just for yourself, but for your business?
It's such a great question, and it really is such an evolution. My business looked very different now, or before I had my kids than it does now. Before my sons were born, I worked a lot. That's just the truth. That my business, got to seven figures because I put in the work, and I could because I didn't have kids, and it was also kind of during the pandemic, so people weren't doing as much. And so I was working a lot of the time. I had a lot of Zoom calls and I had a lot of things on my calendar for a lot of different reasons. Primarily, I was doing coaching, and that was done primarily on calls with clients. But I also was doing a lot of sales calls. I had podcast interviews I was doing webinars a lot. I was doing Instagram lives, Facebook lives. I was just showing up very physically and visibly. And when my first son was born, it wasn't like an overnight switch where all of a sudden I wanted to burn it all down. I actually loved working with clients and I loved my business. And I, at the time, just thought, how can I slightly tweak it so that I can be a mom and be a working mom? And so for the first 18 months, what that looked like was I had a part time nanny and I cut down how much live coaching I was doing, which I was prepared to do, and focused more on groups. And then on the 3 days a week that I did have a nanny, I just tried to get as much done then as I could. And then I was with my son the other 2 days a week. And this was great by all accounts. I mean, in my mind, I felt like I was living the dream because I was making more working part time than most people I knew were making, working full time, definitely more than I ever made full time. So
Mm.
I felt like I kind of had the best of both worlds. But then at around 18 months, I like the only way I can explain it was the universe was sort of speaking to me and saying, it kind of nudging me from every direction and saying, there's something more for you, there's something different. Have the courage to ask yourself what you really think is best for your business and for your family. And it was so serendipitous. I mean, it really was, out of this world, I feel, because it wasn't just about wanting to be with my son more, but it was also I remember just like stumbling upon this article from the Yale Review about how Zoom was becoming less productive and how we actually thought that meetings were such a great thing over Zoom because of the pandemic, but people had Zoom fatigue. And I was like, maybe my clients don't even want to be on Zoom as much. Maybe they don't know that there's another way. Maybe I can explore other ways to structure my business so that I can still help them without being on call so much. And then at the same time, we were getting ready for preschool applications. We live in New York where preschool is literally like applying to college. It's insane. And so that was kind of tugging at my heartstrings, just realizing that my son was going to start school in a year and, could I be with him more? And um, all these kind of things, I felt like prayers were being answered that I didn't even know I
Mm.
was praying. And so that led me down the road of exploring what else things could look like and kind of reshaping some of my coaching containers, but then also productizing some of the things that I had taught repeatedly, and just kind of digging into how to make them passive, which I always knew was possible, but almost just never either had the urgency or the time to explore. Because once you're a business owner, as you know, especially once you're a mom, it's hard. You don't want to break what's not broken. And my
Yeah.
business wasn't broken, it was working, but I just had to have the courage to ask what else I could do. So anyway, this has been a very long-winded way of saying that
No, it's great.
about about 18 months into motherhood, I was like, I think that I can shift into something new. And that's kind of what led me down to passive products. And I love coaching. I'll always have clients. This isn't a situation where I feel like I got so burnt out or I hated it or I'll never have work with clients again. My mastermind is still kind of the heart and soul of my business, but realizing that you can have a predictable passive income totally changed my life.
Mm. And so for those that aren't super clear on what you specifically mean when you say passive income, can you describe how that shows up for you in your business?
Absolutely. Primarily, the way it shows up is through selling products to people that don't know me yet. So digital products. And I think you can do this in a number of ways. You can sell courses, you can sell ebooks, you can sell classes. I mean, you really can sell any type of digitally packaged piece of knowledge, which is really just a digital version of a book or a digital version of being at a seminar, um, and taking something clients repeatedly ask you and putting it into something that everyone can access at a much lower cost. So I have a few different revenue streams that are passive in my business, but the primary one is an ebook. I also have a course, and those sell every day to people that just find me daily.
Mhm. And what's the price point of that? So people can kind of start understanding, analyzing how they could do this in their own business.
My ebook, which is my most sold passive product, sells for $27 for first time visitors and first time purchasers. You can go buy it on my website for $67 if you don't decide to purchase it with that introductory sale. It's kind of like when you go to a new website or, a
Hmm.
new clothing store and they're like, if you're a first time visitor or a first time buyer, here's 10% off. And then if you don't claim it during that first order, then it expires. So I have that opportunity. And I really do recommend if you want to do something totally passively. And to me, that means we're not relying on like a free lead magnet into an email sequence, into a sale, or into kind of a long process. If you want people to just be able to wake up this morning having never heard your name and by the end of the day actually pay their hard-earned money toward you, um, I would make it lower than $50 in that situation. So the ebook itself is very reasonably priced, but then we have upsells on the back end that also add the potential of the customer lifetime value should people
Hmm.
choose to do so, but they don't
Hmm.
have to.
And that was what I was going to ask next, because some people will be hearing, oh, $27, but I need to make X amount of money in my business. And I know because you are very transparent about it, like you make high figure months.
Mhm.
So for somebody who's like, how does $27 lead me to that? How can you like help them bridge the gap between the $27 product and the large income that they could potentially have?
It's such a good question, and I'm grateful that your listeners think that way because I do think a lot of people see people out there making a lot of money with low ticket products, and they're thinking they can do that too without being honest about the amount of volume and traffic
Hmm.
you have to have in order to make like 10 plus $1,000 a month for something that's under $50. So you have to bridge the gap, as you said, to meet yourself where you're at. And if you are just starting out, or if you have a small audience, then you have a few options. Either you can sell a low ticket product to your small audience and know that your income is going to be lower for a little while you increase your audience size and while you increase your traffic, or you can offer higher ticket things behind the scenes or on the back end or as upsells via the low ticket product. So it's essentially like a paid freebie where you're basically getting paid to grow your audience, but then you're offering them something on the back end. And if you really are concerned with money in the beginning, you're like willing to spend the time, I recommend that being a service because if you have more time than
Mm.
money at that point, then offer a service on the back end. It doesn't take as much time to build out and you can sell it for a much higher price point, obviously, than a product because that has no personal touch to it. If you're a little bit more in the in between phase where you have a decent size audience, but you know that you still don't have the volume to support, $10,000 plus sales every month with a low ticket product, you could do something in the middle, like maybe a course that's high ticket or a group coaching program or an event or something. So you're still charging something a bit higher, but you aren't having to do one-on-one if that's something you're ready to get away from.
Mhm.
And then you'll
And
just slowly, inch your way up as your audience grows to need
mm,
to offer less and less of that. Sorry.
I was going to say, is there kind of a snowball effect with this in terms of in the beginning, it starts with this amount coming in passively versus where you are now and how you've built it and grown it? Have you noticed like it just keeps on increasing, or is it something that you constantly do have to be tweaking in your business?
It's a little bit of both. I think that if you choose to have this be part of your business's ecosystem rather than your entire business, everyone's different. Some people they just want to sell products, which is fine, but you will typically make less money. So if you want it to just be a piece of the puzzle, then yes, the better you get at having passive income come in and people coming in through that revenue, the easier other parts of your business become, because those people that are buying your low ticket products are also joining your email list, are also starting to follow you on social media. They're also more qualified leads for something like coaching
Mhm.
because they're already paying you. Like they're demonstrating to you that they really want this problem solved. So it can then that's kind of, I referenced in the beginning how I used to be on sales calls. I don't really do sales calls anymore because people know me so well from the digital products that I sell, and they end up applying to my mastermind or applying to work with me one-on-one.
Mhm.
My one-on-one has been booked out for like 15 months or something. And I don't really have to do sales calls because of this. However, I do still tweak it. I do still keep testing it. I do still keep optimizing it. It's not really something I think I'll ever stop doing for two reasons. One, why would I? The more you optimize it, the higher your profit margin grows. And two, the landscape does change. I don't think any form of passive income, even outside of online business, even with real estate, even with stocks, nothing is completely set it or forget it. And I know everyone wants that.
Mhm.
And you certainly can set it and go do a lot of other things. But if you completely neglect it, in real estate, that's when the toilet breaks and the refrigerator breaks and you have to replace it. Or that same thing in online business. That's when your funnel doesn't. I hope you don't mind my Christmas shirt. That's when
Never would mind that.
very festive. So yes, you do have to maintain it. But I always say it's the difference. Like if you just offer coaching, for instance, and you spend 8 hours a month on one client per se, like let's say, and you make two grand a month doing that, you will kind of stay at that until you change your pricing. Whereas with like the system that I teach and the one we do, if you start the first month, it will take you more upfront time to set it up, but then you really only need to spend an hour or two a month maintaining it and testing it and improving it, and your income can increase exponentially to where you're
Mhm.
making, 10 plus
Yeah.
$1,000 a month doing it.
Yeah. I'm taking your program, passive product sales. And I think the biggest mindset shift for me was going from the freebie mindset to the paid product. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's something that we've been taught so much by coaches in the online industry, no matter what kind of business you have, is always offer a freebie.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there can be some like mindset beliefs of, oh, what if people are put off by that? What if I lose a potential lead because of that? And I'm just curious because I know you have a really good explanation for this. Like, what was your thinking behind actually let the top of the funnel be something that people do actually have to pay for?
Mm-hmm. I think both have their place. I don't think it's a
Yeah.
bad idea to offer something free. And I'm sort of in a situation where, having had my business for 9 years, I have a staggering amount of free information and value out there online. So that's
Yeah.
never something that I was concerned about. And I think if you're starting out, you should have something free, whether or not you want to drive traffic to it, whether or not it's your main focus. That can be a personal decision. There's pros and cons to it. But I definitely believe in the power of having something straight paid. First of all, I'm not charging people $500. There's very little skin in the game in terms of
Yeah.
them paying for something because it's low priced, but it's just enough where I think it really, one, I think it tells you as a business owner that this person is serious about having this problem solved. They're not simply buying something just because they are, bored or like scrolling social media and see something fun. And two, I think that the purchaser is more likely to actually read it and do it because they
Yeah.
paid something. So it's really beneficial for both. We all know what it's like as a consumer and on the other end to have this like freebie graveyard of just information that you don't know what to do with and you don't fully go with and you don't really know how to take action on. And I think that if you have something that you pay even a small amount for, you're much more likely to follow it. And so I think it's better for both parties. And your fear around, if someone is put off by that, perhaps you'd lose someone that would have otherwise bought from you, but more likely than not, that if they are put off by that low ticket product, the likelihood of them then hiring you for something else is probably very small.
Yeah, very, very true. And something that excites me about it um, is that you have the potential to be running ads for your
Mhm.
traffic source, which I'm guessing traffic is such a big part of this, and potentially at least break even on that, because
Exactly.
that's a really
Or
difficult thing for a lot of business owners to have enough cash flow to like get the ball rolling when it comes to ads.
such a great point. I think that's one of the biggest unspoken benefits of this. I dumped thousands of dollars, probably six figures into ads to free products over the years. And it wasn't a
Same.
mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
expensive, you know? And my business was still profitable. So it wasn't like it was all for naught. But yeah, now not only can you break even, you literally can profit and profit completely upfront so that you're kind
Yeah.
of getting paid to grow your list.
Yeah. So with having built out your passive funnel now, and now very like just recently having two kids, what does business look like now versus Leah who was on 8 Zoom calls every 2 days?
It is so spacious. Thank you for asking me that. It is such a beautiful support to my life. I work still probably around 20 hours a week, but it's very much when and how I want.
Mm.
I don't really have any calls for the most part. I think you're my only schedule this week.
Wow.
Yes. I mean, I spend most of the days outside in Central Park with my two sons.
Mhm.
We're a big outdoor family. And the work that I do is pretty much either client support in my mastermind. I am on Voxer with them at least once a day. So they're still very supported. I just don't need to be on calls with them every single day. And or it's optimizing my paid products, or it's like strategizing and thinking about what's next and what more we can do. So it's all very up to me. It's all very asynchronistic, and it really allows me to work when I'm inspired, which I think is kind of a hidden just gift to have, because I think a lot of times as entrepreneurs, we have so much inspiration, but it can feel so convoluted and hard to know when you can actually take action on these things that you're inspired on, because you have so many things that you're committed to. Sometimes it feels like you can't take your head above water. And I think that I always really loved that about starting out, was how nimble I felt. In the beginning, it's like, you can think of a product or a program and have it launched the next day if you really sit down and bang it out. And then as your team grows and as your client work grows and as your responsibilities grow, you have bills to pay, you have people's salaries to support, you have your own lifestyle then to support. You're a mom too. There's more at stake than just what sounds fun. It feels a little bit less like you can do that. It feels a little bit less free, because there's just so much more that you're managing at all times. And I've kind of been able to come back to that sense of freedom and playfulness in it, which has been, beyond
Mm.
it being the gift of being able to be with my kids. And we let go of our nanny when this system really took off, because I'm able to be with them so much. That's the biggest gift. But just on a very personal note, it's also kind of brought me back to what I originally loved about it.
I love that. It's really like a unique perspective to have on it, especially as someone who has a 2-year-old. Like
Mm,
creativity can really quickly go out the window when you've had a bad night's sleep.
I feel that so bad.
Yeah. And like that's kind of something I'm really curious about, because like as you're speaking, I'm like, how could I integrate more of this into my life? And I know what it's like when you're dragged in like 5 different places, and you work from home as well, and you're like, oh, this needs to be tidied up, and is it nap time yet? And what can I cram into nap time? But I'm also really tired and I need a nap. Like,
Yeah.
how are you kind of integrating that 3 or 4 hours a day where you are supporting those clients, or you're putting a post out, or you're writing an email? Like, what does that integration like realistically look like?
It's a great question. And it was a big challenge that I had with my first son, where I felt almost like I had whiplash, going from like playing with
Right.
cars on the
Yeah.
floor to like talking about like a six-figure launch or something with a client. And it can feel like, oh my gosh, just like the context switching is so extreme. How do I do that? I think there's a few tips that I have, or things that have helped me, especially the second time around. First is like, you know very clearly what your season of life is and don't really try to do anything else. And I think a big kind of like agreement with myself that I made and my husband, but mostly with myself that I made when we let go of our nanny is that if I'm going to be the one primarily with our kids, which is what I wanted to do, I am not going to be the one cleaning our house and I am not going to be the one, doing all these other things. And so my husband either does more of that or we hire people. And I just don't make myself wrong for doing that because in my mind, a lot of people pay for childcare. I don't have to do that. So I'm going to be supported in other ways. And that means,
Definitely.
having people come help us throughout the week, not being afraid to just do little things like we don't go to the grocery store, we'll have that delivered. I don't go out for massages, I'll have someone come in, things like that. So I
Mm,
don't feel like I'm scrambling and just knowing that right now it's about motherhood and then my business when I can. And pretty
mm,
much that's it. And I also think something that I didn't take into consideration before I became a mom that I wish someone told me or that I could have thought about better is that it feels like once you become a mom, then you're a mom for 18 years and then they leave and it's just like you're all in for 18 years. But I also think there's something to be said for like the first 4 years. And I know that once my kids are in school, probably I will ramp things up again in a different way, or I'll try to add something new to my business, or who knows what that'll look like. But these years while they're home with you are so special and
yeah.
so short. And giving yourself permission to just have this window be small because you don't need to have this pressure on like establishing balance for 18 years. Just let yourself figure out what you need in these few years while they're home. That's how
Mm,
I think about it. And then the other thing that I think is very important for all working moms or entrepreneurial moms is to know when you are giving yourself a little time for strategy each week and then the rest of the time being for execution and knowing what you need to execute on whenever you can so that to your point every time it's nap time you don't have to spend 20 minutes sitting at your computer thinking oh my gosh what should I be working on, what's the most
yeah.
important thing. So we really try, what I teach this in my mastermind a lot and think about this with some of them in there at the beginning of the week, think about what you most need to do that week, which should be based on what you most are working on that quarter. And then when you're in the thick of it that week, when you have 15 minutes at drop off, or when you happen to get up before your kids or whatever, you're not wondering what to work on, but you already kind of have handy, oh, I know exactly what is going to move the needle the most. And I think that's so important. That's what prevents us from doom scrolling. That's what prevents us
Mm,
from, spending precious time alone, clearing your inbox or something else that like is such a $5 task, totally honestly.
yeah.
But you have to just have that intention with yourself of what am I, when and what am I doing to think about my strategies. And
Hmm.
so I can just kind of push, my foot on the gas when it's time. And I
Hmm.
think not to plug, like toot my own horn, I also have a coach. I think that's why coaching is helpful because you
Yeah.
have a built-in space for strategy so that when you do have time to work, you're not wondering what you should be doing.
Yeah. I think that's beneficial for everyone to hear, whether you're a
Hmm.
mom or not. I think planning doesn't actually come easily to every entrepreneur.
It's hard.
I'm a mindset coach. I wasn't in this to necessarily be a business owner. I'm in here to help and serve people. And then you're learning to have a business as well at the
Right.
same time. And
Right.
so from a strategic perspective, let's say like you said you're doing the task that day that's based off of the goal for that quarter. Like how many
Hmm.
breakdowns would you have of, okay, this is what I'm focused on? Is it I'm reaching this money goal for this quarter, and therefore within that, I know I need to do X, Y, and Z. I'm just curious, like
Yeah.
how you dive into that.
It's a great question. I try not to overcomplicate it. I think
Yeah.
things like strategy and planning can go really, you can get paralyzed because there's so much that you feel like you need to research and dig up and pull data on and then analyze it. And did you do enough? And, it can all be so much. So on a quarterly basis, just very simply, we look at pretty much the 5 steps of our business on a whole. So specifically what they are is how's our lead generation doing? How's our nurturing going? How is our sales going? How's our delivery? And how are like things going with our clients basically? Um, and we kind of rank those. And then per the quarter, we just look at like, what are we most focused on this quarter and
Mm,
or what do we have a launch this quarter? And then for my passive products, I look at them every month and I make decisions on what I want to test on a monthly basis. So my business as a whole, we do quarterly. My passive products, we do monthly. And I just kind of, sit down at the beginning of the month and look at how things are going and then decide what we want to test to improve upon them. So that's really it. And then what throughout the week, I think it's just important to ask yourself, what do I need to do to move things forward? Not just check
Yeah.
off my list. I think
Yeah.
that's so important. It's so easy to get caught up in being an employee to your own business and not have forward thinking decisions. And what is going to help me with my financial goals? I will say I don't particularly make financial goals for my quarter or for my year anymore. I did for a long time, but I had a, big awakening, and you probably know more than this about than me being a money mindset coach, but um, a very big lesson for me was my first six-figure sales month, which I achieved after having tried to do it twice and failing the first two times. And I believe the reasons that I failed the first two times is because I was so fixated on the money
Mm-hmm.
goal. And when I actually did it, I didn't even have it as a goal that month, actually. I mean, of course, I knew in the back of my mind that was kind of like the next thing I was really working toward. And of course, I had tried it twice. So it was something that I knew would get there eventually. But I was just so focused on what I was doing and the people that were
Yeah.
coming into my programs and how I was serving them and the marketing that we were doing. And I'll never forget just sitting on my couch on like the October 29th or whatever, having a glass of wine and realizing, looking at my inbox, that like, oh my gosh, I just made,
Wow.
six figures of sales. So ever since then, I've kind of held on very loosely to the
Mm-hmm.
financial goals, because I find that if you focus more on doing a great job with your work and the people coming into it and your messaging and connecting with them and genuinely connecting with them, the money follows. And it's so much more sustainable that way anyway, because then you've
Yeah.
built something that works well versus, maybe hit an exciting milestone once. But if you just
Mm-hmm.
did everything to hit that milestone, that doesn't really mean anything moving
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah, I completely agree. This is something I totally teach from a subconscious perspective with my clients as well, because when you have a really tight grip on a goal, you actually place really heavy expectations on it and tend to push it away versus
Mm.
that relaxed energy, and being focused on the value. It's like more value is going to come to you in return. And actually, speaking about money mindset, like, I mean, I always want to dive into the topic of money mindset,
Yeah.
but what are some of the beliefs that you potentially did have to work through, or that maybe came up for you, especially going from a very successful business and now becoming a mom? Did that bring up anything for you around money?
It's a great question. What did it bring up with me around money? I think that I've had to revisit my own money mindset practices, because I did so much money mindset at the beginning of starting my business. My mindset was in the gutter. Um, I had a lot of what I think of as like middle class beliefs. I grew up middle class, but my dad was kind of this, I had an interesting perspective with money because he was both an accountant and a financial advisor. So he was a little bit more
Mm,
conservative with money and, didn't really like risk, but very responsible. But he was also an entrepreneur. He also had started his own business. So he kind of did also understand the importance of betting on yourself and investing on yourself. So I kind of had a lot to detangle. But in the first 2 years of my business, I was like kind of doing things the way I thought my dad wanted and that I thought would make him proud, which was being very financially responsible. I only spent money once I had made it. And that really got me nowhere. I mean, the first 2 years were tough. I didn't really make any money. I think I only had 1 month where I made over $1,000. And at the end of the second year, I'll never forget this. It changed my life. It was on Thanksgiving. And I was talking to my then boyfriend, now husband, and I was like, I am going to do things differently next year with this business. I'm going to throw my beliefs out the window. I'm going to go all out. I'm going to just do things that make me really uncomfortable. And if in a year I still am here where I'm just kind of floundering, I'm going to stop, because I'm wasting my
mm,
time and my money by just doing something that's not growing. And by my metric was, if in a year I can't quit my job, I had a 9 to 5 job, I wasn't making
mm.
very much money, then then I'll keep doing it and I will quit. Otherwise I need to fold up shop. And I think I quit by September. So I quit far before
Wow.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was actually a horrific year. It was a very hard personal year because my dad ended up suddenly passing away that year, which was
Mm,
so tragic. But it really, really lit a fire under me. And so that year, I was just saturating my mind with positive things about money. And I read all these books. The Science of Getting Rich still changed my life more than any other book ever has. And a big thing was debt. You know, I went into a lot of credit card debt that year to start my business, to spend money on ads like you just referenced, and to hire people that could help me. I spent like $4,000 on um, an editorial photography session so that I could have good marketing. I mean, it was very, very scary. And I wish I could say that I just had such strong faith that once I made that decision, I just never worried about it again, but that's not true. I lost sleep. I was very, very afraid, but I took the action anyway. And I think that's what mattered. And what's wild is now, you know, I run a debt-free business. I have a debt-free life. I paid off my student loans way ahead of schedule. I fund my family's apartment near Central Park in New York. Credit card debt was the best financial decision I ever
yeah.
made. Like, it's crazy. And I always hesitate to say that because I don't want to like push people to
Yeah.
go recklessly into debt, but it just goes to show you how much your beliefs can dictate what happens for you. And I think if I just kept believing that it was bad and that I was irresponsible, then
Mm,
I honestly still probably be in a 9 to 5 job today. But
yeah.
to get back to your question, when I became a mom, I had to revisit some of those things that I felt like I was so locked in with money mindset. And I think just being a mom, you constantly want to make sure you're doing the best thing for your kids. And so I think the pressure's on more. I don't know that it necessarily brought up negative beliefs. I think it
Mm.
just had to help me re-examine how I handled pressure. And it's still something I'm learning.
Yeah. And thank you for being honest and sharing that in the first 2 years you're making sometimes 1,000 or less a month, because there's
Nothing.
somebody who's probably listening in to this who's in that space, who's in that place, and they think, because they look at someone like you or me or someone else in the industry and think, oh, well, they've just been killing it the whole time. And it's just
No,
not true. It's not
no, girl.
true. So what like words of wisdom or piece of advice would you have for someone who's like really questioning that or thinking that they should be further ahead?
The honest truth that I would tell someone and that I think is that if you want it, you have to do whatever you need to go all in. And when I say that, I mean whether that means you need to hire people to help you, or you need to change your lifestyle, or you need to work in a different way, or you need to surround yourself with different people because the naysayers in your life are getting to you. All in looks different for every person. But if you can't fully get there, you will very much frustrate yourself. Now, I do think that you can get to six figures doing a lot of things pretty well. But I think if you want to go beyond that, I specifically see around if you want to go beyond 200,000, that is when you need to feel like, okay, I have to kind of stop doing the things I know how to do pretty well and really dial in and completely be a business person and go all in on this one thing. And it can really bring up so much emotional things, which is why people should hire you, because there is no greater personal development moment than when you really want to start a business and you have to look straight in the mirror at all the things that are stopping you from doing that and why those things are stopping you from doing that. So my word of wisdom might sound a bit cynical, but the truth is not everyone will do the things that they need to do to go all in. And I think that to protect your heart, you either need to make the decision that you are going to, or you might just decide to do something else. That's the honest truth, because I
Hmm.
think you'll frustrate yourself more by having one toe in and one toe out, so to speak. Um, and I think it can do more damage long term to like your confidence than
Yeah.
if you either go all in or just do something different.
Yeah, totally. And also know like it does take time and people don't realize that. I think people think that it's an overnight thing where you're suddenly making 5 or 6 figures, and give yourself the gift of grace and allow yourself to bridge the gap between where you want to be and where you are right now, and go all in with that energy, but don't think that it's going to happen next month. Like, give
Um,
yourself the gift of allowing it to grow and build, because you're actually going to build a more sustainable business by doing that as
right.
well.
Right. Have that long-term vision and enjoy the journey. It's such a
Yeah.
gift to have your own business. It really is such a playful, beautiful representation of humanity where you just get to express who you are and what you care about and be in business for yourself. And a lot of people never have the courage to do it. So if you do, then enjoy the ride even though it's bumpy.
Yeah. And so for the woman who's either already a mother, yeah, I think she would already be a mother and who's like, I want to be fully present, as you said. I love what you said about these first 4 to 5 years. But she's so torn because she has these ambitions on her heart. Like, what words of advice or wisdom would you have? Because there's probably the belief, like, if I do this, it might take away from that, and vice versa. Like, what would you want to share with her?
I mean, I certainly think you can chase your ambition even when you have young kids at home. I think in those situations, that's when coaching just gets so important because you have to be just obnoxiously laser focused on what is really going to move the needle toward your ambition. And that's going to mean saying no to a lot of things, both within your business and within your personal life. And if it's so important to you to have a successful business and to grow that business, or if there's a particular thing within your business that you really want to see come to light, then know and be okay with and actually be proud of yourself for saying no to other things in your life and in your business that aren't in service to that thing. So I don't think you have to choose, and I don't think that you have to pause things while you have young kids at home. I really don't. I just think that you have to be brutally honest with yourself about what your priorities are and what you're choosing to do instead of these other things. And if you can do that and not compare yourself to other moms, I think that's something I've really had to learn because
Mm,
no one that I know in New York in my circle of mom friends is kind of straddling the two the way I am. Either they work and they make a lot of money because this is New York and it's expensive and they're very smart and they're very ambitious and they have full-time childcare, sometimes even more than, sometimes they'll be paying for school and daycare and a nanny because they need so much support. Or they are completely stay-at-home moms. Their partner funds their life and provides for them, which is also an amazing situation to be in. But I'm really the only one that I know that does both. So
mhm,
I have to be so fierce in my own mindset and my own convictions about my choices so that when I see, a mom friend who's able to I don't know, like take the day off and go away easier than I am. I have to just remember, well, she does that because she is a nanny who knows her kids so well because she chooses to have that full-time childcare. So it's much easier for her to go away than me. My kids it would be jarring,
yeah.
for them to have someone to come in. And then vice versa, when I see my mom friends that, aren't working and they're able to go out more often on the weekends together or when they drop their kids off at preschool, they all go work out together. I don't do that. When my son is in preschool and my
Mm,
newborn is napping, I work. And
yeah.
just re-owning that these are my choices. This is really what I want right now. And you have to just cut out all the noise that makes you feel like you're doing it wrong.
Yeah. And every version of motherhood and parenting
In
is
every
unique.
version. Yes.
Yeah. It's like you got
And
to do what's
yes,
aligned for you because
right.
everyone's going to be different.
Right. I mean, this applies whether you're working or not,
Yeah.
I'm sure all of these moms have to do the same thing. They have to remind themselves
Yeah.
that they prefer to work than stay at home or that they prefer to stay at home than work. These are hard decisions. And I think
Yeah.
just giving yourself, well, as you said, grace for knowing that it's okay for this to be challenging. It's okay for things to not always feel clear. But it's not okay to tell yourself that you can't have what you want because it's not true.
Mm. Oh, that is like such a perfect phrase to end on. Like, I just love that. Thank you. Like, it is not okay. Say it again. It is not okay to tell
to
yourself
that you can't have what you don't want
that
or that you can't have what you want because
that
it's
you
not
can't
true.
have what you want. I love that. You sound like my husband every day. That's what he's
What a good
reminding us.
husband.
Yeah. Leah, it has been so beautiful to hear your honesty and transparency. And that's what I knew would happen coming on this podcast because I feel like you are like that on social media and the way that you show up. It's very refreshing. So
Thank
where can
you.
people go and connect with you and learn from you?
You can find me on Instagram at Leah Gervais with an underscore after. You can go to my website, leahgervais.com. I haven't updated it in a while, but there's stuff on there. And you can also always email me, leah at leahgervais.com.
Amazing. And you have a podcast too, right?
I do have a podcast.
Yeah.
It's been a while since I've recorded something. I have two podcasts. I have a main podcast called Your Biggest Vision, which you can find anywhere. And then I have a private podcast, which is free and you can get into it on my website, but it is private because I share so many things like numbers and more personal things called Seven Figure Secrets. And so that one's much more marketing focused and business focused. Your Biggest Vision is more about motherhood and mindset.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we made it through nap time with no one crying.
You did it. You did it. Thanks so much for having me. It was a pleasure.